Hey guys, it's Michael the DC Multiverse Collector here, bringing you a review of the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Steel figure. Now, I'm really excited to be looking at this guy. He's been long rumoured. We saw a leak of him about a year ago, then he was announced and released in very short order. He's about to hit Australian retail in a week or two. I'm super grateful to Head Start Toys for providing me with this review sample, so I can take an early look, at least for Australian viewers of the channel. For American viewers of the channel, you've probably seen a few YouTube reviews of this guy already. You know he's a bit of a controversial figure. There are some things to talk about for sure. I mean, one very respected YouTuber who I like and admire and enjoy his content a lot gave this figure a 0 out of 10 recently. You know who I'm talking about. That seems absolutely insane to me, but I'm going to be looking at this figure objectively measured. I've got no axe to grind, and you know, I've got no favour to curry. I'm going to be telling you the honest view, my honest view about this figure. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. And you'll also notice that I'm filming this review in front of this diorama, this NECA Street diorama that I reviewed recently. It's a new addition to my collection. I just want to experiment with this as a background for my reviews. Let me know in the comments whether you think this is a good change or a bad change. Do you prefer the figures in the background, or do you like this sort of more detailed diorama in the background? Or does this make it a bit more generic like other YouTube channels out there? I know a lot of YouTubers have this diorama and use it in their videos. I quite like it, but if you don't like it, I will change it. Anyway, let's have a look at the packaging. On the side, you'll see it's Steel from the reign of the Supermen storyline, that seminal storyline that follows the death of Superman from the 90s. It's a huge event, and there is Steel looking glorious in art form. Doesn't quite look like the figure, but we're used to that, and we're really getting that sort of 90s death of Superman, reign of the Supermen cast filled out. You know, we've got Connell, we've got Eradicator. Soon we'll be getting a cyborg Superman, if rumors are to be believed. That's really cool. So yeah, I'm really excited to be building out the cast. So let's get on with it without any further ado. Okay, so here's Steel out of the box with all his accessories. Now you'll see we don't get all that much, but given that Steel is a big beefy boy, I'm not too upset about that. I never get too mad when you get a really large figure that maybe doesn't come with as many alternate hands or anything like that. So look, I'm not too fussed by that, but let's have a look at what we do get, starting with the boring stuff. You will see we get the display stand, which I would just say, you know, big deal, but we have not been getting display stands with everything lately, so maybe I shouldn't take these guys for granted. It's there, it's basic, it's thin, it's simple, but at least it's there. Coming up next, we have the obligatory trading card. Beautiful art, really love that. And on the back, there is a data file all about John Henry Irons. If you want to read, you can pause that and have a look. Really interesting 90s character, well worth reading up on. And in terms of other accessories, the only real accessory we get is Steel's big whopping hammer, and this is where we start to have stuff to really talk about. So sculpt-wise, this is kind of okay. It sort of largely resembles the comic book like depiction of his hammer. But the thing that everyone's talking about and that I've immediately noticed is the choice of plastic. This is extremely bendy, pliable plastic. So much so that when I was pulling it out of the box, it just deformed completely. Really flimsy feeling, like it is going to break. And because it's so long, you actually get to see like every bend, every deformity, and it don't look so good. It looks really wimpy, which is not what you want to be suggesting with a character of this much sort of strength and power. I mean, his name is Steel, but this makes him look more like jelly, you know, like, yeah, I wonder why they do that. It's obviously some sort of, I would believe it's more of either a safety issue, like they don't want people poking their eyes out, or it's some sort of like durability issue, that they think that with something this thin, if you do it in a brittle plastic, it'll snap. And those might be valid, but I'm sure there was a better way than this. But in terms of like the sculpt, there's some beautiful like scuff marks on the hammer. It's not too bad. You can see it's got this paint application, this little blue splashes of paint. Remember that'll be relevant later when we talk about the figure. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. It looks okay. Yeah, it's cast out of this sort of bluey grey plastic. It's all right. It could have been a whole lot better. Steel is an interesting one in a number of ways, and it's worth talking about. So first up, I think the main thing to notice about Steel is that he's an all-new sculpt, which I love. I've seen so many reused molds recently in this line that it's always a joy and a pleasure to get something that's sort of sculpted top to bottom new. At least it looks new. I mean, I don't recognize those arms. Certainly the gauntlet pieces are new. The head is new. The shoulder pads are new. This cape looks unique to me, although it's very similar to ones we've got in the past. Don't quote me on that. It might not be new. The upper legs I can't tell, but the lower legs surely are. They've got all this beautiful, like, unique sculpting here for, like, the boots, and the feet are new as well. So overall, like, if it's not 100% new, it's close to, and it's good enough for me. Like, this feels interesting and exciting to look at. So that's really, really good. Aesthetically, there's a lot going on here though. So Steel, if you look at him in the comics, is often depicted either sort of with a chrome look or with a blue-grey look or a silver look. Like, he kind of depends from panel to panel how he's painted and sort of the hue that he's given. That sort of blue hue, I think, was often given to him just to suggest a level of shading and depth to the chrome. I always thought of Steel as literally being sort of like stainless steel, like a chrome look, but maybe a duller chrome look. But this is not wrong. Like, the color that McFarlane has gone with is not wrong. The color itself is actually a fine choice. What I think is an interesting decision though is to just cast him in this plastic and not paint him. You can see that there's not much paint on this guy at all on the actual body, although there is a fair bit of paint overall. What I mean by that is that, like, you know, his core limbs, like his legs, his arms, are just sort of solid blue-grey plastic. It's that pearlescent plastic that sort of has sort of swirlies in it, which I'm not super fussy about, but it doesn't look like metal. That's the thing. I just don't think this looks like metal. It looks more like shampoo. You know, like when you get glossy shampoo out of the bottle and it's all glossy in your hand, that's what this looks like to me. And you can see that the plastic they've used for his upper torso is a different color than the lower torso and the rest of the figure. So that's just a little bit strange, and it's obviously just down to the plastic choice. They've used a different plastic and they haven't matched the color exactly. I actually feel like the plastic they used for his upper torso might have been a better choice for the figure overall. So I'm not in love with the sort of unpainted plastic look of this guy, I've got to be honest. Let's talk about the things I do like though. I quite like the head. I think the head is quite nice. I think the eyes are really nicely painted. I really like those bolts that we see in his head. They are really, really well done. And I think the expression overall is a really good one for Steel. It's stoic, but it's got a bit of expression there. Like, it's got feeling. It's not just blank, which I quite like. There's not much paint there, although there is some outline around his eyes, which give them some definition, and his eyes have got a bit of white paint there to make them stand out a little bit. You will see it's most prominent on his shoulder pads and on his arms. There's been this sort of blue splashy paint applied to this guy haphazardly, and I think it looks really bad, and I don't know what McFarlane were thinking. I don't know if it's just an error in the way it's been applied or this is what they intended, but you'll see here, especially on the diaper piece there's just splashes of blue paint to try and give him a more blue hue, and it just doesn't work. It just looks like he's been splashed with blue paint. It looks like he's fallen in a vat of blue paint. Look at the top of his head there. You'll see it's quite prominent. There's just a blue smudge. It's just not a good look. I don't know why McFarlane did it. He would have been better off just leaving him as unpainted plastic, in my opinion. But anyway, coming to have a look at his body, I really like the big, coarse-looking S symbol or the steel symbol. I like the way it's sort of scuffed looking. That's really nice. It is raised, which is good. It's always nice when they sculpt detail like that. Coming down to look at his belt, he's got the light white sort of paint applied in a sort of sketchy looking way to all those little compartments on his belt. I think that looks really, really nice. And a similar effect is achieved on his gauntlet here, which you'll see is quite nicely painted as well and gives it some depth. So I really like that. You'll see that his lower boots have been given a wash, like a dirty wash, which I think is really nice in theory. He does look a bit grungy though. I've never thought of Steel as being this sort of dirty looking. He looks like he's been walking in mud or rust, or I don't know. Like, it's obviously a deliberate design choice, and for what it is, it's done well. I just don't know that I agree with that particular stylistic choice, but that's just a matter of opinion. The cape itself has very little sort of texture to it. It's just flat, which is probably okay, but I'm sort of used to McFarlane capes having a little bit more going on than this, and you'll see mine here has a big sort of scuff on the back. Hopefully that's just mine. So yeah, aesthetically, he's an interesting one. He's not as disastrous as some people are making out. I've heard some people say he's hideous, or the paint is abysmal. It's just not very good. But it only really affects the figure if you look at him up close. From a distance like this, like, he's all right. Like, I think he looks pretty good on the shelf. So yeah, aesthetically, he's okay. I actually quite like the look of him, and I think he'll look good in my display. When it comes to articulation, however, there's some weird stuff going on here that I was quite shocked by. So it's all the standard McFarlane articulation you would expect. Like, his arms, have like a forward and backward on the butterfly, which is really nice. That's all covered up nicely with that little piece in there. The pauldrons, or whatever they are, the shoulder pads up here are quite soft and flexible, so you can get his arm up, I think, as much as you would really need to, although it's all attached to the cape, so it's not going to give too much, but you can get something going on. It's a little bit limited, but I kind of get why they sort of are hampered by this design. That's fine. The head rocks side to side only a tiny bit, can spin round. He can look up about that much, i.e. not much, and he can look down quite a lot. It's the standard ball joint wrists. You've seen it a million times. It rotates, it hinges. He's got double jointed arms. Even with that gauntlet there, you still get a good range of motion. Legs, well, okay, let's just get to it. Let's get to the elephant in the room. This diaper piece is actually hard plastic. I don't think there's been another McFarlane figure that had a hard plastic diaper like this. They've all been soft rubber, which allows for lots of articulation while still maintaining the look. This maintains the look. It looks good, but oh boy, does it hinder his articulation. I have no idea what's going on here and why this has to be the way it is. Someone can enlighten me in the comments if they know why this choice has been made. But what this means is that you can't really move his legs. You can't kick him out that much. I could force this, but then I'm deforming this hard rubber and I will ruin that diaper. I will wear it down and I will ruin it. So you can probably get more range of motion, but you won't want to. It'll ruin your figure. Like, it'll destroy your figure. Let's look at the back here. He's got a great butt, but because this is hard, you can't do anything here. So ask continuity rating of 1 out of 10. Like, it looks good, but there's no movement. There's just no movement. There is no problem with the splits. He can get out that much, which is probably fine for a figure like Steel. He's got double jointed knees, which go about that much. So he's a bit stiff. Yeah, see, there's just not much going on there. There is no swivel, but he kind of does sort of rotate a little bit at the leg there. No boot swivel, obviously. And he's got a very stiff rocker on his foot. He hinges up and down, and he's got the toe articulation, huge toe articulation here. So after giving Steel a bath in hot water for about 30 seconds, I found that some of the articulation has loosened up quite a bit. So for example, the diaphragm rotation is now much smoother, no problem there. He even has maybe a little bit more forward crunch than I thought. The water has really softened up whatever glue was holding all that so stiff, or it's just loosened up the plastic, which is good. In terms of the diaper, it's still rock hard, but around the side here it's a bit thinner and you can actually kick out the leg 90 degrees if you want. You can't really go back though, because that is still way too hard. But around the side here, you can kick out the legs 90 degrees, but what it will do is leave a little bit of deformation in the diaper. And over time, that will sort of deform the diaper. So like, it's not an ideal design, but it is more flexible and more malleable than it looked like it was at first blush. So that's pretty good news, I guess. But overall, this isn't like an excellent moving figure. It's very stiff and very limited compared to what we usually get. So overall, this guy, in terms of his movement, I would say he's actually super limited compared to the average McFarlane figure. People like to complain about McFarlane articulation and say he makes statues, and I think that's all a bunch of BS. His figures are actually very well articulated in a number of ways, despite some limitations. Certainly they're on par with the competition, if not exceeding the competition, in the mass market retail figure space. This guy, however, is sort of, it's almost like the poster child of what all the naysayers say McFarlane is. Yeah, disappointing articulation, I would say, for this guy. Anyway, let's do some comparisons and see how Steel stacks up to some other figures. To start off with, let's take a look at Steel alongside his Superman or Reign of the Superman or Return of Superman related figures. Starting from the left, we have Connell's Superboy, then we have the Collector Edition Return of Superman, and on the far right, we have the Eradicator. Now, we are missing, of course, a Cyborg Superman. I hope we get an official release soon. A 90s style Cyborg Superman would be cool. I know there's been a prototype of a more modern design floating around, but, whatever we get, I hope we get a Cyborg Superman soon to sort of complete this cast of characters. I think these look really good together. Proportionately, I think it all works. Steel is taller than everyone, which I think is okay. But yeah, overall, it's a really nice addition to this display if you're building one, so no complaints about how he fits in with the rest of the figures. And here we have Steel alongside some other figures in the DC Multiverse line that have attempted to give off a metallic look, and I think have maybe done so to better effect. So starting from the left, we have the Page Punches Mr. Freeze from the Fighting the Frozen wave. Now, this guy just has a few applications of chrome paint or silver paint, but it looks tremendous. It looks so good. The chrome paint really brings this figure to life, gives some visual interest, and I kind of wonder whether a similar treatment, maybe with a sort of a black wash over the top, might have worked wonders for Steel. To Steel's other side, you have Captain Atom, who's also been cast in a pearlescent plastic, though it's just a much more bright, light, silvery pearlescent plastic. Again, let me know in the comments whether you think Steel might have looked a bit better like that, maybe with sort of a light blue wash applied over the top, maybe as an option. And on the far side, we have Brainiac. Now, that's Brainiac from Injustice 2, who it looks like he's been cast in a sort of a darker pearlescent plastic with then a black wash applied over the top to give him some grunge. And I think he looks tremendous. The wash really brings out the detail in the sculpt, and I just wonder whether something could have been done for Steel just to give him a better look. Let me know what you think about this sort of bluey grey plastic they've cast him in and whether you think it works. I'm of two minds. It's an interesting one. Finally, here is Steel alongside Cyborg, the Build-A-Figure from the Flashpoint wave. Now, Cyborg was cast in a sort of a pearlescent plastic with some paint as well on the torso, and I think overall, he's sort of a brighter, shinier looking figure. I'm not sure if that would have been appropriate for Steel, but it's sort of another way that McFarlane has approached these metallic looking characters. And on the left of the screen is the Hasbro Marvel Legends Ultron. Now, I just threw this in here because this figure is one of the rare figures that's sort of painted from head to toe in silver paint, and I think it looks really tremendous, shiny, clean, beautiful. I don't know if you actually want Steel to look like that, but it certainly is another way to tackle these sorts of characters, and yeah, open for discussion about how they went about Steel, but yeah, let's move on to my final thoughts. So overall, Steel is something of a disappointment, but he's not a terrible figure, far from it. I think from a distance, if you're looking at this figure on display as part of your Superman collection, I think he looks generally pretty good. Sure, he doesn't have the metallic finish that I would have liked, but I think overall he's an impressive looking figure. He's tall, he's beefy, the head sculpt looks great, the emblem on the chest really stands out. So overall, I think it's a fine looking figure. It is one of those figures though that the closer you get to it, it starts to fall apart, and once you're playing with it in your hands, it really doesn't hold up to scrutiny. The articulation is stiff and fairly weak, under par for McFarlane, less than what we're used to, and the paint, the flecks of blue paint, are just not that attractive. So it's one of those figures that if your primary objective is to have a nice looking figure on the shelf that you admire from a distance, he'll fit the bill really well. So on that basis, I recommend him, but there are a few caveats. Anyway, that's all from me. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. It's a small click for you, but it really helps me out. In the meantime, friends, happy collecting, and thank you so much for watching.